morning. Thank you for coming to hang out with us today. So I got the chance to see Smile last night, and I'm so excited.
What'd you think?
Fuck, you were, like, heartbreaking and phenomenal in this. Like, honestly, like, there's something that gets me about, like, a wordless performance. Like, I'm such a sucker for that, and you conveyed so much, and there's just, like, it's that whole concept of, like, what lurks behind a smile, right? And it's like, I'm fine, and there's this scene where you're, like, gonna go visit your sister, so you're like, I'm fine, and then it's, like, in the mirror, like, I'm fine, like, making, like, the fine face, but it's, like, you're not fine at all. So I just kind of, like, just that process of, like, conveying that without any words and just using your eyes, and, like, where do you go to get to that?
I think I do better without lines, to be honest. I mean, like, no, no, I'm kind of kidding, but not really. So, okay, I think that that is such a big part of, like, acting that I think a lot of people forget about, that, like, if you're thinking about something, it looks like you're thinking, but it, like, doesn't really matter what you're thinking about as long as you're thinking about something and that's all you're thinking about. You know what I mean? Right. Instead of thinking about, like, your next line. Because that shows, you know? So when, and also, it's like a testament to Parker, like I've been saying this, but he really stayed on my face a lot, and just, like, kept it going and took those moments very seriously, and, like, we took time with them. And, like, that, I think that that's hard for a first-time feature director to accomplish because there's no time, you know? So you're always rushing. So the fact that, like, we got to take a minute for those, and I didn't feel like I was just stealing them, you know, because I always try to. But he really respected those moments, and I think, I don't know what I was thinking about. Who knows? It's just, it's hard. Okay. No, it's not a secret at all. It's just that, like, it was all very hard and exhausting. So I think I was just probably tired, and
you're like, that was just genuine exhaustion at that point. It is. I like that you referenced that he was, like, willing to stay on those shots, because it becomes kind of a bit of a dance. Like, when we talked about it yesterday, he said he wanted it to be uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable, and it has to do with, like, it's a combination of your performance and the framing, and it lingers on you, and it's like a little bit chaotic. And you're just like, ooh, it feels weird.
You know? Yeah, you're like, this is too much. Like, no. Yeah, it's like the scream after with the arms after the fall. Like, when we were shooting it, I was like, cut, please cut. I don't want to, like, and he was just, and it just rolled and rolled and rolled. And and then when I watched the movie, I'm like, wow, it really, like, you stayed on that moment for a long time, to the point where people were probably like, okay.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we have these, like, natural rhythms and a kind of beat where you feel like something is going to cut away. You're like, okay, I get it. It's uncomfortable. And then you cut away, and it's like, oh, now it's uncomfortable. Now I feel, like, awkward. And now I feel, like, weird. And this is, like, not the natural, like, now I look away. Like, what do I do? Yeah. But very much hung on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Was that, you got to just kind of go, like, hysterical in that scene, like, screaming? Was that fun to kind of, like, let loose? Like,
yeah, it definitely was. I mean, it was, like, she is so sort of, like, held back, especially at the beginning. Like, she, like, is a professional, and she's, like, good at her job, and she's perfect. She's, like, a perfectionist. Everything's perfect. Her hair. So composed. Exactly. And she has to be, like, around a lot of overwhelming emotions and keep it together. That's kind of, like, the nature of her job. And you can see there's some stuff bubbling under the surface, but at the same time, like, it was kind of fun to just go totally for it, because and like it was really helpful to have the hair and the makeup really change and the wardrobe change a lot. That, like, helped kind of loosen me up and change from one to the other.
It is a visual deterioration as well as, like, the internal, though. Yeah.
I think someone said decomposition last night, which I appreciated.
Well, I'm like, yeah, kind of accurate, I guess, by the end of it. That I got sidetracked with decomposition. Now I'm thinking of zombies. But it's kind of, like, female hysteria is like a thing, and that's kind of touched upon. And it's very, like, pointed to use. We hear the terms crazy, nut job, and all these terms that, like, people don't really use now, or at least not, like, publicly. And it's kind of, like, touches upon this fear of, like, there's a line in the movie too, but, like, you can't ever escape your own mind. Yeah. And then what happens if, one, that breaks, or two, if the people around you think that's broken? And that's such, like, a deep-rooted fear. Is that something, like, do you have that kind of existential fear of, like, I think that's, like, a natural thing to be scared of?
I think that's probably everyone's, like, fear. There's somewhere inside of everyone, there's like that fear exists. What would it be like if I was experiencing something and believed something that nobody else did? And like, I think it's true. It's particularly for women, and I think that like we have been not believed historically about several things, but particularly our pain, you know. And I think it continues to be denied and denied and denied, and it makes, you know, people more comfortable to go, no, that's like, no, you know. I mean, I see it all the time. So I think it was a hard thing to portray, and it's probably a really hard thing to watch for a lot of women.
Yeah, it's kind of like that pat on the head kind of thing. And it's like, no, there's actually something happening here.
Totally. Yeah. And like, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, the pain is the pain, you know. Yeah.
What were some of your? Did you have any kind of like references or influences before going into this?
Like influence, not like I try not to watch. Like, I think I'm just kind of like a sponge for stuff, but I don't go to one thing in particular. But I did actually read a lot of stuff and watch a lot of I like watching documentaries because it's actually people going through things. I didn't really know what to watch documentaries about.
I was just about to, what does one watch a documentary about for this?
I don't know, but just studying like some like childhood trauma and how it can manifest, and what having like a parent who is like severely depressed and whatever, but like how that affects adult children kind of, and like not dealing with it, you know, later in life. I mean, I'm not even making a comment on anything. This was just like how I got into the role kind of. And then also finding out what it's like to work in an emergency psych unit. It's like a really interesting thing because you are treating people and then sending them somewhere else. So you get the first couple of minutes of everybody coming in, but you don't typically treat them like in the long term, right. Which must be kind of hard, you know, because I don't know, whatever, working in a hospital is hard. I can't even imagine.
I always wonder about like just like the empathy of that, and that's touched upon in the movie too, because I'm like, oh God, like, would it be wonderful to help people? Yes, but I think I'm the kind of person that would like absorb too much of that. Maybe how do you like, where do you draw the line and where do you cut that off? And like your character grapples with that as well.
Totally. Yeah, like I was in the ER the other night all night, and I was like, I could not, like, so many people in pain, I can't, it's too much for me to be around. I mean, I think that people are amazing who can somehow create like a distance. Yeah. Just not me.
It's not
so yeah.
What are some of are you a horror movie fan? I know that you say your brother had introduced you way too young to horror, which is the best way to come to horror.
Yeah, it has to happen.
What are some of your favorites?
So like I was just saying, like, early 2000s horror movies is when I was like going to the movies, so it was like The Ring and House of Wax, like these sort of more like fun. Yes. I don't know. The Ring wasn't fun. The Ring was like pretty gnarly, but then I went back and watched all the like Rosemary's Baby was cool for me because I grew up like 10 blocks away from that building. Oh wow! And yeah, and that's another one that's just amazing about a woman. It, like, has so many I don't know, ties to real life, and then like with Get Out and like Hereditary, I feel like that's been this new wave of like really high concept things dealing with like, I don't know, just there's so many cool parts of the genre that like they all seem like such different genres within the genre. So I like one from all of those.
Yes. Like when someone says, I'm not really a horror fan, I'm like, well, there's like subgenres and subgenres. Totally. So there's probably like one that you like.
I'm sure, like Shauna did like comedies that just blood. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm like, this is funny. Like, we're not disturbed right now. Like, this is fun. We're having a good time. Yeah. I really like Don't Breathe.
Oh. Yeah. That was a traumatizing one. I like that you specifically referenced Rosemary's Baby and The Ring because there are elements of both of those in Smile.
Totally.
I got a chance to see Smile last night. It was fucking awesome. Oh, creepy, terrifying. I'm not looking at Smiles the same way now, so a little bit thankful for like some of the masks because I'm like, please don't smile at me. It's gonna make me feel real weird about it. Exchanges are just now. I'm just like, okay. You got to see it with an audience. Was that the first time seeing it with like a big audience?
Yeah, the first time seeing the finished film with a big audience. We had done some test screenings early on, but yeah, it was amazing to get to watch it. And I mean, Fantastic Fest was like the best audience to watch it with.
That's a perfect audience for a movie like this. Did you get to hear like the gasps and like the jump scares where you just like, yes, every time?
Oh yeah. No, that's the best. You know, when you work so hard to make those things and you just hope they're going to land with audiences. So hearing it and feeling the kind of molecules in the air, it's great. Yeah.
The fear molecules as you're just like feeding off of it, growing more powerful with every gasp.
Yeah.
There was a woman next to me, a stranger sitting next to me. My favorite kind of person to sit next to for a horror film because she like excessively would like jump and like flail about, and afterwards I was like, you were so much fun, thank you. And she's like, I was so worried that I was going to like annoy you. She's like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, no, I'm being genuine when I say like you are like the #1 best kind of person to sit with. Yeah. Like I wish she was sitting next to you because I feel like you really would have appreciated it.
Yeah, definitely. No, I love that. Yeah, I love the audience to have a visceral physical reation to the film and to hear them. Yeah.
I will attest for this woman. I don't know her name. Shout out to her though, but she was having a great time. Awesome. You got to use a lot of practical effects in this movie. You mentioned that was very important to you over CGI. Do you want to talk a little bit? I don't want to get spoilery, but I do want to talk about your use of practical effects because I'm a fan. So
yeah, no, I mean I grew up on practical effects. I love them. It's one of the reasons I wanted to make horror films, and I just think that when something is real and the actors and performers can interact with it and it's there on set in front of the camera, it has a different gravity to it, you know. And I also I think visually you can kind of, unless you've got a Marvel budget, you can kind of always tell when something's CG. And I think that just inherently, you know, practical effects they're just more effective, and I love them, and I fought very hard to use them.
Yes, you got to work with some legends on this, right?
Indeed, yeah. Studio ADI, Tom Woodruff and Alec Gillis, yeah, the best.
Okay, how did you manage to make that happen? That's like your first feature, and that's who you're working with for your practical effects.
Yeah, so we reached out to them. It was, you know, we didn't have a lot of time or a lot of money, but I got to hop on a Zoom with Tom Woodruff, and I just basically told him, like, hey, you shaped my childhood. Like, this is the reason that I want to make movies. And we just had an amazing first chat for like an hour and a half, just talking about our love of practical effects. And they kind of went away. They came back. They, you know, ran some numbers and they're like, we're going to make it work. And I was so excited.
And that's what did it. You just had to like confess your love over Zoom, and that's
yeah. You know, I think it's just sometimes we're all sort of fans at heart, and we got together and sort of shared that fandom. I think.
I love that. Did you also get to tell them about what the story is and why you wanted to tell this story?
Totally, yeah. And I think that, you know, the thing that they got to build for the end of the film, you know, is sort of the payoff of all of the themes and motifs that are running through the entire film, and so I think it was a very special thing to get to do for the film.
Yes. What were some of your influences for this? Because we're dealing kind of with like female hysteria. We're using the terms crazy and is she a nut job, and like we don't really say things like that. But there's a lot of those instances in this, and it's kind of like that scary thing of like if your mind breaks or if the people around you believe that your mind has broken, like what do you do with that?
Totally, yeah. Well, so, you know, a lot of and I love that you picked up on that because I wanted to really place the audience with the character so that we are feeling every instance of somebody saying something like that, you know, because I do think that people are very flippant and glib when it comes to those terms and throwing them around, even like people who are in positions of authority, like the cops and stuff like that. So, you know, I really looked at like character stories, especially from like the 70s and the 90s, even the 60s. I mean, like Rosemary's Baby was definitely on my mind when I was making this. But, you know, a film that I constantly was thinking about while making this was Todd Haynes' Safe, which is one of my favorite films of all time. I think Julianne Moore's performance in that is amazing. But the way it places you with that character's anxiety and really puts you in her subjective was something I set out to accomplish in Smile.
You mentioned that you wanted people to squirm in their seats and feel uncomfortable, and you definitely did. Something about like Sosie's performance was amazing, and you can kind of just see like this like in her eyes and in her face. Aside from like obviously like the physical, like her performance that she's bringing, you can tell that's just like breaking and like deteriorating. But there's just something about also like the way that you're framing it, and you just stay so close and you linger on things, and there's like the camera is moving, and it's just all becomes very, very uncomfortable. And at a point where you think something is going to cut, it doesn't. And you just stay with it, and it's just there's something like inherently where you're like, okay, like something about human interaction, you're like, and that's where that ends, but then it doesn't, and it keeps pushing it, and there's something about that that's just like, ooh, feels like kind of weird and just like awkward.
Well, I love hearing that. Yeah, I mean, we set out, myself and all my collaborators, it was very much about like, it's not just the external sort of bump in the night stuff that's happening. It's about how are we using the tools of filmmaking to really tell the story and amp up all that anxiety and dread. And so I love that you picked up on all that because it was all incredibly intentional and, that really we wanted to use the camera and sound design and everything to really help tell the story and place you either in the character's perspective or in the character's experience, one or the other. And yeah, all those things kind of come together to create that feeling. And we also, again, you talked about like pacing or cutting, constantly trying to find ways to like subvert expectations or throw people off and just make them feel totally off kilter and strange, sort of like they're losing their minds with the movie. Yeah.
Because I think like you watch a certain amount of movies and there's kind of like, there's a rhythm to it, and there's also just, again, like a rhythm to human interaction. It's like, and this is like the polite part where you end this, right? And then you don't, and it's impolite, and then it gets uncomfortable and awkward. So, but that's fun. Like, it's fun when you're watching a horror movie.
I agree. I think I love, if I can get an audience squirming in their seats or like, they're so uncomfortable and nervous that they start laughing, that's like a lane I want to live in.
I love that. My nephew is 13. He's recently gotten very into horror, which is like such a joy for me.
That's awesome.
But he watched this trailer and he said, I think this is the first one that I'm too scared.
Oh, wow. I'll wear that as a badge of honor. Yeah.
I'm going to make you a pin with that on it, you guys.
That's great.
Angel's nephew, too scared to watch Smile. Do you have any kids in your life that you have nieces or nephews that you can like make watch scary movie?
No, not really. But I love seeing like younger generations get infatuated with horror. I think there's so much now that is competing for our attention, and everything's on the phone and all that kind of stuff. And when younger people get into films, and especially genre films, and learn to love that, it's awesome because you want it to keep going, and you hope, and you hope like new filmmakers are going to come up too and continue the tradition.
What would be like your top 5 recommendations to like my 13-year-old nephew? Like, this is like to dip your toe really into the genre.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. I would say, The Shining is all time, and I think it's a must viewing for anyone. I think the original Alien needs to be seen by everyone. John Carpenter's The Thing. I mean, talking about practical effects that are just insane. I would say, either Ringu or The Ring, or preferably both. Are those are such amazing shockers that totally changed cinema, in my opinion. And I think that not everybody considers it a horror film, but I think Jurassic Park is something that the original everybody should watch, because the new films are what they are, but that original film has got like real scenes of horror in it that are amazing, and it's such a wonderful film.
That's always a funny conversation. Like, is it horror? I'm like, well, did you at any point want to crap your pants? Because then, yeah, we can consider it a horror film. It's a monster movie.
Totally.
The monsters are dinosaurs, but it's a monster movie.
Yeah. What's scarier than
there are a few
giant
thing
thing with teeth and
a T-Rex
wants to eat you.
chasing you down? I'm like, I think I'd rather face a slasher probably.
Totally. Yeah.
Better chances against Jason Voorhees, I guess, right?
I think so.
Okay, last question. Would you rather battle a T-Rex or a velociraptor?
Oh, God. Maybe a T-Rex, because like at least if it's going to eat you, it's going to just kind of be in one
Maybe
go.
quick.
The Velociraptor feels like it's going to be so awful.
It's going to take its time. It's going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
All right, Parker, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the movie.
Thank you.